can. Hey folks, we are a little late, live here from Old Baldy Lighthouse for another edition of Quarantine Collections. We were having some major technical difficulties here. You would think that doing a dual screen on Facebook would be pretty easy, when in fact it is not easy at all. It is not easy at all. So I have McCallie Givens here on the phone, and McCallie is going to be speaking with us today about the pottery collection that we have in Old Baldy's archives. You see, McCallie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. McCallie has been a trooper. She's been working from home up in Wilmington while we're down here on the island producing content. I think if there are two words to describe McCallie here around the office, it is smart cookie. And all summer long, this smart cookie has been collecting or been researching all the different pieces of pottery that we have in our collections. And the pieces of pottery come from a 1986 archaeological dig that was here on the lighthouse grounds, performed by students from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington in the year 1986. McCallie, there were 5 different goals, correct, for that archaeological dig? Maybe you can kind of elaborate for us folks what those different goals were?
Yeah, so there were a couple of different goals for the dig. One of them was to investigate the lighthouse itself, kind of below what you see out there, so underneath the grounds, and they dug up around the lighthouse. Another one was to look at Fort Holmes, which is the Civil War fort that's on the island.
My favorite.
Yes, that is your favorite part. The others was to investigate the keepers' cottages that were on the grounds when Old Baldy was in use. So we're thinking there was probably 3 keepers' cottages that were on the grounds.
Absolutely, yeah, an original keeper's cottage that was made simultaneously with Old Baldy Lighthouse in the year 1817. And then we had a second keeper's cottage. The keeper's cottage that I'm in right now is a model of that second cottage. That keeper's cottage is arguably the most famous because a gentleman named Herbert Bamber came here in the 1890s and took 4 photographs of that keeper's cottage, or 3 photographs of the keeper's cottage and 4 photographs of the grounds. And then there was a final keeper's cottage that we know burned down. We're not quite sure why it burned down, but it was likely a lightning strike. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that for us, McCallie. So before we dig into these pieces of pottery, and McCallie's going to detail what we can learn from these pieces of pottery, we'd love to hear from you folks out there. If you are listening, we have quite a few listeners, McCallie, so the pressure's on. So if you're listening out there, folks, give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know where you're listening from. Let us know what your connection is to Bald Head Island. And if you have any questions for McCallie, leave them in the comments and we will find an answer for you. We have Donna McCallie. Donna's saying, good morning. We are watching from Long Island, New York. Thank you. Well, thank you, Donna. Yeah. Thank you, Donna. We really hope that your family is happy and that they are healthy. So let's dig into these pottery shards, right, McCallie?
Yeah, do you want to show them kind of a picture of the map where they dug at?
Absolutely. Kara's saying, good morning from Glasgow, Connecticut. Or, excuse me, Kentucky, not Connecticut. Yeah, so I'm going to pull out, we have in our archives the archaeological report that was completed for the dig. And in this, there is a map of the various areas that were excavated. And you can see here on this map, and I'm showing them McCallie, we have the lighthouse up here. And there is the oil house, if you're familiar. Jesse, fellow public historians listening from Wilmington. Hey, good morning, Jesse. It's been a long time since I've run into you. Susan, good morning.
Jesse.
Yeah, Susan, good morning from Annapolis, Maryland. And then this area is where the majority of the dig was completed. That is where the remains are, the pilings, if you will, underneath the surface. Where the 2 out of the 3 keepers' cottages were located. And this is the modern area of the chapel. So it's important to know that a driving factor in completing this archaeological dig is because they knew that the chapel was going to be constructed on land that most certainly had archaeological remains. So they wanted to make sure to take out as many of those cultural resources as possible before they completed construction on the village chapel of Baldhead Island. All right, McKelly, I put the map away.
Okay, so we got our first piece of pottery.
I sure do.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a rundown. So by no means I am an expert on pottery or ceramics. I came into doing this a couple months ago. So the firing process and how they're made, I'm by no means an expert, but a really great site, and we are going to post it in the links later on, is the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Laboratory. They have some really great examples of pottery for everybody to see. So we are going to call these, they're called Sherds, spelled Sherd. It comes from the word potsherds, which is what archaeologists use when they find these objects in the ground, these pieces of pottery, not a complete vessel. So we're talking about today earthenware, which is a type of pottery that is fired at a lower temperature. What's cool about it is if you lick it or you put your tongue to it, your tongue will probably stick to it.
My tongue didn't stick to this, McCallie.
It didn't stick to it? Well, you're a little crazy for licking it because it does have lead glaze on it. So I would make sure I'd wash your hands and your tongue now.
I didn't really lick it, folks.
I'm glad. So that's kind of how you can tell if you have earthenware. For example, people know porcelain, which is a little bit more glass-like. If you licked it, your tongue wouldn't stick to it. So that's kind of how people can sometimes tell the difference between the different type of ceramics. So this first one that we have is an edged ware. It is a shell edge, so along the edge of the ceramic piece, the vessel, it would have a design on it, just like you're looking at now. So it would be molded relief, impressed buds. There's like really cool little designs to it. And this was made about 1795 to 1850. That's when it was pretty popular. And it would either be blue or green paint normally on them. And then it'd go around the entire interior rim. Okay, so we'll move on to our next piece.
So McCallie, this is a really pretty piece of green. So how did you come up with these dates? You said 1795 to 1850. Where was your source for dating these pieces of pottery?
That one came from a article Travis sent me from a dig that I believe in Illinois. And they had done they'd used a couple people's sources from other digs. It kind of created a median dig. So this was when production was kind of at its highest point, was between 1795 and 1850 for this type of edgeware.
And that's a really important term that I wanted to elaborate for folks. The purpose of McCallie doing this research is that we were trying to come up with this median date for all of our pottery sherds. We were attempting to figure out what that middle date, based on each extremes, the most modern date and the oldest date, so we can come up with an idea of which family or which keeper left behind the most cultural resources. Or I guess, McCallie, it could be a combination of keepers and their families. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it. When things are popular and they're being produced, that's great. But at the same time, we buy things later on after peak production might have finished. Or it could have been a family heirloom that was passed down and they brought it with them. Keepers brought it with them when they came over here to live. So there's a couple, you got to think about those outlying factors. But, finding the date was important to help us try to figure out maybe which keeper would have had this or used this piece of pottery.
Absolutely. Hey, good morning, Greg. It's good to see you as well. Kathy Gilbert, family watching from Newville, Pennsylvania. Good morning from good old Newville, PA. Then we have Mackie. Mackie is listening. Hey, good morning,
Mackie.
We miss you, Mackie. And anybody else I'm missing here? Oh, and of course, Chris Webb. Chris Webb, we needed our IT department this morning.
We did. We needed a little help.
All right. Your Vanna White is on to the next piece of pottery, McCallie.
Okay, so this next piece is a transfer printed earthenware. The design is called a linear pattern. So it's those up and down lines within a floral motif. So you see the little leaves throughout it. The reason why I picked this one to talk about is if you get up close, you can see that there is an imperfection in the lines. And that is because transferware is basically, it had a piece of paper that would be transferred and cut and fitted onto that vessel that it was going to be made with. So if they didn't cut it and fit it properly, then once it was fired, you would see the imperfections in the lines. So that's why I picked this one. So this was definitely developed, transfer printing was developed in England as a cheaper alternative for Chinese painted motifs. It's really expensive to pay somebody to paint something. And if you can print it and make it cheaper, then they did. So that's really cool about this one. We're thinking the date for this one was between 1842 and 1858. We get that date because that's when linear pattern design was popular.
Fascinating, McCallie. Thank you for that. It's pretty. What other, you said it has and we're all looking here, it has a leaf and a floral motif. What other motifs were found on pieces that were transfer printed?
So a lot of different motifs were created, and you're going to see this in the next one too. So you would see a British view, an American view motif sometimes, Chinese, a pastoral, so, people working outside, a classic motif, and sometimes you would see romantic motifs as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm holding up 1986.1.3 for these folks to take a look at that other motif.
So we're thinking this one is probably an American motif. It includes the neoclassical architectural streetscape. And you see the two women walking over what we're thinking is a bridge. You can't see it all because it is a shard, with a man and kind of their outfits. So that's kind of why we're dating it there. You see a couple other people walking more towards the buildings behind. So that would be the front side of this vessel. And if Travis flips it around, you're going to see on the back side of this vessel a geometric design as well. So this is the top of the vessel, and it was obviously something that people were going to see the inside and the outside of. That's why they put this transfer print not on just one side, but both sides of the vessel.
What type of vessel could this have been, McCallie? What is your...
it's definitely not. It's definitely like a three-dimensional. So you're having to think it's not going to be a plate or a platter, and it's not going to be a teapot. It's going to be. It's really thick for a cup. So I'm narrowing down the things it couldn't be, but a gravy bowl or something, a bowl of some sort. It could be something like that.
some good Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Yeah. So we're thinking this one's 1793 to 1862, and that's really because that's when the range of production for that American view as the central motif was popular.
All right. And how did you know that they were American, McCallie?
You and I talked a lot about that because it was kind of up in the air between a British and an American motif. And I think, like, after just a lot of conversation, we felt comfortable thinking they'd probably be American. Could be a British motif too, though, so you never know. Which they were both produced around that same time.
That man looks like me when I volunteer at Tryon Palace.
It does. You love to wear costumes.
Of course I do.
And go back in time.
All right, McCallie.
Okay. So this next one, I think Travis has it's a spongeware with a hand-painted design. So you'll see on the top of it, you're going to see the top of the rim of the vessel. It has a blue sponge decoration. Sponge really means they really kind of just sponged it out. There's several different types of spongeware. You can have a cut sponge design, or you'll see like spatterware as well, which is just kind of looks like you threw paint at it. Below that sponge, you'll see what's part of a floral motif. It's got large brush strokes on it, and we're thinking this is probably a chrome color floral motif. The reason why we're thinking that is the introduction of borax to the glaze colors allow for the colors to become either brighter or darker. It allows you to manipulate those your basic rainbow colors by introducing borax, which was pretty popular in the 1830s.
Can you elaborate on that term a little bit more, McCallie? What is borax?
Borax. Well, I'm going to get you the right definition for it. It's from what I can tell, it's basically sodium. It's more science than history, so this is why I have to look it up. It's different compounds that are created with crystals, and basically they were putting all that together or adding that ingredient to their production to make the colors a little bit different.
So making it more complex as science and technology progresses in this industrial era, right?
Yeah, completely. They were always looking to make stuff better. And you'll see that with different types of earthenware and glazes on earthenware. You sometimes might see a blue tint to it 'cause it's pulling that glaze was pulling blue colors. And as ingredients and technology evolved, they became better at hiding those imperfections almost.
Great. Thanks, McCallie. Hey, folks, if you're out there listening, give us a shout out in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you're listening from. Let us know your connection to Bald Head Island. And if you have any questions for McCallie or I, if we don't know the answer, we're going to do our best to find the answer for you. So leave us a comment there. We'd love to interact with you folks that are listening from all around the nation.
Yeah. Okay, so are you on to the next one, the green and brown one?
I sure am.
Okay, so this is called a cable-decorated earthenware with a roletted band. So, like we were just talking about, technology and production changing. One of the things that evolved with creating earthenwares was this slip. It's basically a mixture of clay and water applied to the vessel's surface. The design, and it would help you create designs. So it would allow you to use different colored slips to make the vessels pretty. In the early 1800s, technology was patented in 1811 for a multi-chamber slip. So that just allowed you to use multiple slips at once. And that is how you're getting that cable decorated design. So it looks like it looks like a worm. It looks like you took your finger and put a bunch of colors on it and then made a pretty design on the vessel. So that's kind of the idea. Is you can see that blues pulling with the creams and you'll see the bronze exterior on it. And then above that, that is what is called a roletted band. So it's just a decorative technique that would be used. So you would roll some type of texture along the vessel, and this is normally done on the rim of the vessel, and you can see that the part of the rim of the vessel is still intact. It's got a nice chip on the top of it. But we're thinking production for this one was 1810 to about 1860. That's when the roletted band was popular, as well as the cable decorated design.
McCallie, we know that this area around the lighthouse would have been occupied by not just the lighthouse keepers, but river pilots and their guests, and a significant number of soldiers during the American Civil War. Is it a possibility that we're looking at the cultural remains of others like these soldiers rather than just the lighthouse keepers?
Completely, and that's what was really cool about this dig is how far back they went. They went towards that battery number 4 that Travis has taken you guys to. It went that far back for this dig. This dig wasn't just done right around the lighthouse. It was done back near the chapel. So you are looking at remains of other people. They could have brought, families could have brought, or soldiers could have brought these pieces over during the Civil War. They could have been given to them by a family member, and they could have brought them over.
And McCallie, I'm pulling up the map again for folks that might just be joining us. So we see the lighthouse up here on the top left-hand corner of this page. And yeah, as McCallie was saying, way down here is the chapel, and that is where 3 of the 5 test areas were completed. So as McCallie was saying, it may not just be the lighthouse keepers whose remains we are exploring.
Yeah, definitely. And what's cool, and you can check this out on our online collections database, anything 1986 on the website is a part of this dig that happened. So it wasn't just pottery that was found. Travis has shown you guys some mini balls. Those came from this dig as well. Buttons, like dominoes pieces, several different pipes, all came from this dig that happened in 1986. This is just a small part. We have about 100 objects from this dig.
You're telling me that you researched almost 100 objects?
I have researched all the ceramics in depth since October, and I have started doing, we've got glass, buttons, and mini balls. I've started working on those as well.
It was no small feat, folks. McCallie did a lot of hard work on coming up with this research for us. All right, so I think this is my favorite piece in the entire collection, McCallie, this beautiful marbled ware earthenware.
Yes, it definitely is, I think, my favorite too. And this will be probably our last one. So marbleware is another example of that slip decoration, the mixing multiple colors together. So you can see there's these darker blues and light blues with this brown color. I know it might look black online, with like a white, a cream white, and they basically mixed all those together on the vessel. And then in the middle of it is what is called an annular band. So annular bands were just different bands and in a horizontal view that would go around the vessel in various widths. So there's an annular band that's dividing up those 2 marble decorations. So we're thinking this one's peak production of technology was 1760 to 1850. And like we've been saying, this could have been made then, but used later on. It could have been made in England then and then brought over here. So the date could be a little bit later when it was actually used on the grounds.
Interesting. Well, I think we have enough time. I'm going to bring up the 1986.1.95 right beside .29, and maybe you can compare and contrast for us, McCallie.
Yeah, so this one, like I said, we just talked about that one annular band that you see on that marble decoration. This one has multiple bands in various widths going horizontal around it. So this is probably a teacup, or we're thinking maybe a mug that somebody would have drank out of. That's when annular bands were pretty popular. And they were used with other techniques like marbling. Another technique is mocha ware, which you can find out more online about. It's a pretty cool technique. It's a little bit complex, but it's really cool to see as well. So annular bands would be used by themselves and then sometimes used with other decorative techniques.
Interesting. Okay. So to kind of wrap up, McCallie, what can we learn collectively from these pottery sherds?
I think it really can tell you about the people who are living there, the lighthouse keepers and their families. For example, earthenware sometimes would be a cheaper alternative to porcelain. Just like I talked about today, transferware was a cheaper alternative to Chinese hand-painted goods. Lighthouse keepers made good money, but they were probably not the richest individuals. So it tells you a little bit, probably them being a little bit more of a middle-class family. So it gives you a little bit more about their socio and economic backgrounds, as well as the people that were there and what they liked and what they found pretty and useful, and the type of vessels that they were using during this time.
Such as 1986.1.29, clearly these lighthouse keepers enjoyed ale just as much as Travis and McCallie do.
Yes, you are right.
All right, McCallie. Well, I really appreciate you joining us this morning from your self-isolation up there in Wilmington. We very much miss McCallie. I'm not quite sure she misses me.
I
do. So we really hope that things get back to normal and we can all be together, because we definitely appreciate having McCallie and her knowledge on our team. And as you can tell from our conversation this morning, history and the work of historians is the result of collaboration. And McCallie took the lead on this, but this project found the information that we know today through lots of collaboration, not just between McCallie and I, but several different historians within our circles, and also someone who's not a historian, someone who's actually works with pottery every day as a professional, an artist.
Yeah, Amy did such a great job helping us identify these different types of shards and pottery.
That's great. Well, hey folks, thank you for listening in. Again, if you have any questions, perhaps you're listening in the future, put those in the comments and McCallie and I will find an answer for you. Be sure to check out our brand new website at oldbaldy.org. It just went live a few days ago and it is looking very nice, almost as pretty as some of this earthenware. On our website, you're going to find information about our historic happy hour on April the 8th. Rather than meeting here at the Lighthouse for culture and cocktails, we're going to be meeting virtually. You can see us and tell us what kind of cocktail you're having from the comfort and the safety of your own home. And we're going to be discussing the history and the legacy of the old boathouse in the saltwater marsh that we unfortunately lost during Hurricane Florence. We will be back this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We're going to be broadcasting live from Captain Charlie's station out towards the Cape. We're going to be talking about that famous lighthouse keeper here on Bald Head Island. And then McCallie and I are going to take our normal weekend on Sunday and Monday, and we will be back on Tuesday with some more great virtual content. And I know that we're going to be bringing McCallie back on board to impart some of her wisdom on all of us. So thanks, McCallie. Thank you.
Anytime.
Of course. Hey, you take care. You be safe and you be happy. Bob Locke, thank you both. Very informative. Hey, Bob. It's good to see you, or good to hear from you. I hope the Bellamy Mansion is doing well. So folks, on that note, thank you for joining us. We hope that your family is healthy. We hope that you are safe. And we very much hope that we can get life back to normal once it is safe to do so. We'll see you this afternoon. Take care, everybody.